In the gentle chalk downs of what would one day be called southern Britain, where skylarks hung trembling in the sky and the river threaded silver through green valleys, a cluster of round huts had taken root. They were half sunk into the earth, roofs thick with reed and turf, so that from the surrounding hills the settlement looked almost like a natural swelling of the ground. The people who lived here had once been wanderers, following herds and ripening plants across wide landscapes. Now they stayed. The wild emmer and barley grew thick in these sheltered folds, and for the first time, the energy gained from gathering food far outweighed the effort of finding it. They called this place home, though the word had begun to feel heavier than it once had. Mira rose in the half-light before dawn. The familiar ache in her lower back greeted her like an old neighbor. At 19, she already moved with the careful stiffness of someone much older. She was not tall like her mother Lyra had been. Lyra had stood straight as a young birch, her frame honed by seasons of walking light-footed across open country. Mira's own height had shrunk by several inches, her spine curved from years spent kneeling at the grinding stone. She wrapped a flax shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside into the chill. The communal grinding hut stood at the center of the village. Inside, the great sandstone quern waited. The lower stone was broad and fixed. The upper one, heavy enough to demand both hands and the full weight of her body, or a smooth hollow worn by generations. Mira knelt, knees pressing into the earth floor, already polished by countless hours of labor. She scattered a handful of emmer grains, small, golden, brittle, and began to push. Back and forth. The grains cracked, split, turned to coarse flour beneath the relentless pressure. The sound filled the dim space, a low, monotonous rasp that seemed to echo inside her skull. Her palms were thick with callus, fingers stiff. The ache in her back sharpened with each stroke, climbing vertebra by vertebra until it reached her neck. She worked in silence, but her mind wandered far. She remembered being 7, clinging to her mother's hand as the band crossed the same river during the salmon runs. The fish had leapt in bright arcs, silver against dark water. They camped on the gravel banks, wove willow traps, smoked the catch-over fires of alder and hazel. Lyra carried her daughter on her back during the long treks, pointing out distant blue hills. "The world is generous if we ask only what we need," she used to say. "We leave no scar deeper than a footprint." Children came rarely in those days. 4 or 5 years between births, because no mother could carry 2 infants across moor and forest while the group pressed on. Now, in the village, babies arrived every 2 seasons. The huts rang with their cries. Women's bodies bore the marks of frequent pregnancy and endless labor. This was hailed as the blessing of settlement. No more spacing births by hardship. No more fear of starvation between migrations. Yet Mira saw the cost in her own shortened frame, in the bent backs of every woman she knew. The flour mounted. She swept it into a clay bowl and carried it outside to the storage pit. The pit was deep, stone-lined, covered with a rush mat to keep out rain and rodents. She poured the fine powder in and watched the level rise. Enough for another week, perhaps more. Last winter the drought had bitten hard. The wild stands had thinned, and the pit had run low by early spring. Quiet quarrels had broken out over shares. Old Garr, broad-shouldered and sharp-eyed, had stepped forward. "The land gives more to those who tend it properly," he announced, and marked out the richest plots for his own kin. No one argued. His sons were the strongest hunters left. Their flint-tipped spears spoke louder than words. Mira returned to the quern. Tia arrived soon after, 16 and already round with her third child. She knelt at the second stone, moving more slowly. "Another one coming," she said, patting her belly. "The spirits are kind to you," Mira replied. Tia gave a tired laugh. "Kind? My back already feels like old wood." They worked side by side, stones grating in rhythm. Mira's thoughts drifted again to the hazel woods of autumn, when the band gathered nuts in open baskets and no one claimed a single tree. If one copse was poor, they walked to the next. No granaries, no guarded boundaries, just the immediate return of food shared and consumed. Now the hazels were fewer. Men cleared land with stone axes, earned brush, sowed barley in straight, possessive rows. Garr's fields yielded most. His family ate best. Others bartered labor for grain. Young Wren, once free as any, now worked Garr's plots to repay a poor harvest. Debt had appeared, quiet and insidious. By midday, Mira's shift ended. She stood, knees cracking, and walked to the river. The water ran low, exposing smooth pebbles. A solitary salmon darted upstream, a ghost of the old abundance. She waded across to the far bank, where wild emmer still grew untended. She plucked a head, rubbed the grains in her palm. They were small and sharp-tasting, but free. She could leave. A waterskin, a flint blade, the open hills. Perhaps other bands still moved across the high ground. The thought sent a thrill through her, and a cold weight of fear. Her little sister depended on her share of flour. Her aunt's back was worse than her own. Voices called from the village. She turned back. That evening, the people gathered around the central fire. Garr stood tall. "The spirits have blessed our pits, but others envy what we have built. We will dig a ditch and raise a bank to keep what is ours safe." Murmurs of agreement. Mira sat in the shadows. Her aunt leaned close. "What do you say?" "We are fencing ourselves in," Mira whispered. Her aunt sighed. "It is home now." Sleep came fitfully. She dreamed of walking under endless sky. Before first light, she returned to the stone. A grain caught. She forced the quern harder. Pain lanced through her back like a spear. She cried out and crumpled. Tia hurried over. Garr appeared, frowning. "The stone has done its work too well," Tia said. "Rest today," Garr told her. "We need you whole." Mira lay staring at the roof beams. Whole for more grinding, more children, more walls. By dusk she could stand. She slipped down to the river under moonlight. The current tugged at her legs as she waded deeper. Across the water, the dark hills waited, silent and open. She could go. A child's cry drifted from the huts, her sister, perhaps. She paused, water to her thighs. Not tonight. But something had shifted inside her. The gift of grain and permanence had begun to feel like chain soft at first, then tightening. One day, she thought, those chains would snap.